Everyone, welcome to the California State University of San Bernardino's Conversations on Race and Policing, a series that began following the killing of George Floyd by Minneapolis police officers in 2020 and has since produced over 100 episodes with leading scholars, journalists, lawyers, healthcare professionals, members of law enforcement, faith-based leaders, and the formerly incarcerated, as well as artists, activists, students. I'm Mike Sherman, a fellow with the Brennan Center for Justice and former FBI agent, and I'm excited for this episode, which will include both a film and a conversation. But first, I will introduce my colleague, Professor Matt Patino, for the land acknowledgement.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Patino. I am an adjunct instructor of history at Crafton Hills College. I'm also a former police officer with the city of Rialto here in California. We recognize that California State University San Bernardino sits on the territory and ancestral land of the San Manuel Band of Mission Indians, the Yuha Vietnam. We recognize that every member of the California State University San Bernardino community has benefited and continues to benefit from the use and occupation of this land since the institution's founding in 1965. Consistent with our values of community and diversity, we have a responsibility to acknowledge and make visible the university's relationship to Native peoples. By offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm indigenous sovereignty and will work to hold California State University San Bernardino more accountable to the needs of American Indian and indigenous peoples. And now I will turn it over to Professor Amber Broaden.
Peace, everyone. My name is Amber Broaden. I serve as an adjunct faculty in the psychology department at both CSU Dominguez Hills as well as San Bernardino, with a specialization in legal and forensic psychology. I'll pass it over to Mary for the introductions. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber, and for the rest of my colleagues. Welcome, everyone. We are, as Mike said, we're very excited because we're not only showing a film, but we're going to talk about that film. I will wait for our guests to introduce themselves after the film. But for now, I just want to whet your appetites a little bit by saying that this film explores the plight of the film, by the way, is called Fractured, and it explores the plight of defendants with serious mental illness who are found incapable to proceed to trial on criminal charges. Many of you will remember maybe a year or so ago, we had Hakeem Browder on, who was also talking about this very same thing, except not in the South. This is in New York at Rikers Island, where his brother was lost in the system. His juvenile brother was lost in the system, and he's in the process of doing something about what's going on at Rikers. But anyway, with no delay, please welcome Dana Miller and Chief Durwin Briscoe. We'll do the film first, and then we can have our guests talk. But Ashley, do you want to start the film?
I've been in jail probably like 40 times. I grew up in foster care and group homes. My mother passed away. My dad's in a mental hospital. He was on drugs. He started huffing gas. It first started when I was a child. In arts and crafts, I was putting a little eye with glue, and I heard a voice in my head say, "I've got my eye on you." And I called the Secret Service, the NSA, the FBI, the ATF, the DEA. No one's done anything. If I'm being terrorized, if I can't get help from the police, I've got over 100 police reports, and no one's done anything. I don't want to be held responsible for whatever type of attack that might be next, because I'm trying to stop it and nobody wants to help. Appreciate you guys for taking the time to listen to me.
For the last 2 years, I've been investigating the plight of jail inmates living with mental illness for the Charlotte, North Carolina NPR station, WFAE. Some of those inmates are too sick to understand the charges against them. That means they're unable to stand trial. They can wait many months, sometimes more than a year, just to get the care they need so their cases can move forward. I've gotten to know a number of those inmates. One is Dylan Ledford. He's a 32-year-old man who'd been living on the streets of Gastonia outside Charlotte. He's got a long record of crimes, including larcenies, drug possession, even soliciting sex with a minor online. His latest arrest was in June of 2022. Ledford is still in jail, waiting for a bed in a state psychiatric hospital. I first met him a month after he was arrested. About 2 months later, we met again. This is our third meeting. His lawyer is present. What are they telling you about why you've been here so long?
I'm not getting any information. They're not telling me. They're telling me that there's a long wait for the hospital. I'm being patient. I'm not really trying to rush the process, but there's a lot of stuff legally in my case that hasn't been brought to light yet, as far as, you know, my mental health and everything like that. I'm doing a whole lot better. I'm still hearing noises, of course, but I'm still hearing voices, and it's like a tape. It's like they're playing it on a tape. Like it's right here, right beside my ear, and it's a tape. So like when I look at something, like if I look at that restroom sign right there, it would say restroom. It's like playing a recording of what it is, and it knows I'm going to be looking at it before I look at it. It's like predicting me looking at it.
Yeah, Ledford was arrested for allegedly calling a school to warn that there was a bomb on the property.
911-523, what's the address of your emergency? Person has called the building today, gave his name, identified himself, and said, we have explosives buried on the grounds at Bessemer City High School. He said they were under a pile of dirt near a bus. We're not sure where he's talking about.
No explosive device was found. According to Ledford's attorney, an evaluation stated that Ledford appeared to have delusions and paranoia associated with schizophrenia. Like many inmates who live with serious mental illness, Ledford doesn't think he needs medication.
I've seen 2 doctors on the computer here. Now, there's a lag delay, and what this artificial intelligence is capable of doing is capable of changing the conversation and spoofing the entire conversation. So when I'm talking to the screen, it's capable of changing what they're saying and what I'm saying. But I really don't think that it's medicine that I need. I need resources to defend myself. You know, I need defense.
Oh. All right, I guess this is you. Listen, thank you again.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch.
All right, thank you so much.
After he'd been in jail for about 7 months, a judge said that Ledford's mental health prevented him from understanding the charges against him and assisting in his own defense. So under the U.S. Constitution, Ledford was found to be incapable to proceed to trial, or ITP.
There's a common understanding that if you are not able to understand the nature of the proceedings, and if you are not able to assist in your own defense, and you have a mental health diagnosis, then you cannot go forward in court. We don't hold those people accountable for their conduct in the same way that we would for someone who doesn't meet that criteria.
This is Dylan Ledford's file. And you can see in this picture just how much better he looks than he looked yesterday. He wants so badly for people to understand what he believes is endangering everybody. Before they can stand trial, ITP inmates like Ledford need to have their mental capacity restored. That typically happens in a state psychiatric hospital. They get medication if they need it, and lessons like these about the court system.
Once both sides have presented their case, it is then up to the judge or jury to decide if the accused is guilty or innocent.
Restoration is not full treatment. Restoration is getting you to the point where you can work with your attorney.
After you enter the courtroom, you can go up to the in-court clerk, who will be seated to my right.
They have to be able to answer some basic questions about the legal system. It's court education school, so that they understand enough to go forward.
After Ledford had been in jail for almost a year, his attorney asked the judge to dismiss the charges against him.
All right. Done with David A. Phillips, Judge Pisani. You may be seated. Come on, Your Honor.
With the court's permission, the first matter will be Dylan Ledford. You can find this on the green calendar, page 12, margin 43.
Okay.
Good morning, Mr. Ledford.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, there is a motion in the file. It was filed by Ms. Monteleon,
I have it.
and that is why we're here today.
Thank you, Your Honor. The procedural history of this case is something that we see, unfortunately, all too often, and that is Mr. Ledford was booked into our jail about a year ago. I'm kind of at my wit's end with some of these cases, with my clients being in custody for as long as they have been. So in Mr. Ledford's case, I filed a motion to dismiss. It's kind of like throwing a bomb out there, basically asking the judge to dismiss a case. They don't want to risk anything happening in the community. There was nothing else for me to do. Mr. Ledford has had 2 evaluations. Both of those evaluations agreed that he is not capable to proceed. He's been committed to a state hospital, but he doesn't have a bed date. Mr. Ledford is being deprived of his due process rights. His case isn't moving anywhere, nothing is happening, and I think he's being held beyond a reasonable amount of time.
Ms. Monteleon, if the court were to dismiss this case today, what would happen to your client?
Your Honor, I would hope that we could get an involuntary commitment order, have him potentially taken to our local hospital and evaluated there.
Is he taking the medication that's prescribed for him now?
He is not. And the jail has a policy, I believe, of not forcing the inmates to take the medication. So if they refuse to take it, they won't make them take it.
Ms. Hamlin?
I do appreciate Ms. Monteleon representing her client, but she has no solution in place right now. She says in the jail, he is not receiving the treatment he needs and he won't take his medication. And then when Your Honor asked her what her plan was, she said, I hope to get him involuntarily committed. So this is a great concern for the state, because we not only have to protect him, we have to protect our citizens.
So you're saying I'm not being represented properly?
That's not what I'm saying.
I think that's what you're saying, ma'am.
Sir.
Thank you. That's all we need to see here to say today. That I'm not being represented properly. She's incompetent. She needs to be fired. She's incompetent, sir.
Would you please be quiet, sir? Okay, I'll give you a chance to talk if you'd like to. All right, the court is looking at the charge as well, which is false report of mass violence on educational property. Under the statute, he can be held for 39 months, which would be the maximum sentence on a Class H felony. In the aggravated range, he's not to a 1-year level now. The court has concerns where this young man could possibly get the help that he needs. The statute also says that if there's a possibility that he could be restored, we don't know if he can be restored because he won't take his medicine. And his evaluation stated that they believe that he could be restored with help through Broughton Hospital. Therefore, for all those reasons, your motion to dismiss is denied.
Thank you for hearing us, Your Honor.
Thank you.
So,
That's exactly the way I anticipated it would go.
yeah.
You spoke with Ledford yesterday, right?
Mm-hmm.
What did he say?
He was pretty agitated yesterday. He wouldn't really address anything that I wanted to talk to him about. He had an agenda of what he wanted to talk about.
Right.
And I think that's where his frustration today came from.
Yeah. His aunt and uncle didn't show up today. Did they even know?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea. You know, the DA was right. He really doesn't have a support system. So,
Yeah.
frankly, it's not really up to me either. Like, I'm not a medical professional. I can't go up there and dictate what he needs.
Right.
All I know is that what he needs is not jail.
Right.
Right. So none of this is helping him.
Yeah.
As of November 2023, there were 166 ITP inmates in North Carolina waiting for a bed. Our investigation found that half of those charged with felonies like Ledford are behind bars more than 313 days before they're transferred to a hospital.
In half a mile, turn right onto Foxhill Drive.
And I've learned that those long waits are a problem throughout the U.S. At least 17 states have been sued over inmate wait times. A federal appeals court has ruled it's unconstitutional for inmates to wait more than 7 days after a court's finding of their incapacity to proceed. But my reporting shows that in many states, inmates are waiting months. And those wait times don't include the number of days inmates sit in jail before they're found to be ITP.
It's important to say that the long waits to basically have their capacity restored or even to get a bed, that's kind of the lesser problem.
WFAE hosted a town hall on the problem of people living with mental illness who end up in the criminal justice system.
The bigger problem is that we didn't have what we need to treat the mental illness that actually led that person to the criminal justice system in the first place.
As bad as we are describing the level of care for behavioral health services in incarcerated settings, it is worse in community. It is much harder to find people care because we have had 1.2 million people in North Carolina without health insurance.
That's right.
And poverty and mental illness are often co-occurring. And this is why I need the legislature to hurry up and pass a budget so I can expand Medicaid to begin to try to fill this gap. But I just want to be clear that we are making up for a past sin here where we have never treated behavioral health like on equal measure with health broadly, and we have never prioritized it as part of primary care.
A lot of these people don't have family anymore, right? So their family members may have tried and given up, and after a while they just burned out.
In the 60s and 70s, during JFK, big promises that we were going to move from these large institutions to these more community-based settings, and large institutions started to downsize and some closed, but the community settings never came.
Under this legislation, custodial mental institutions will be replaced by therapeutic centers.
In 1963, John F. Kennedy signed a law that funded community mental health care, so people could get treatment outside of large institutions.
It should be possible within a decade or two to reduce the number of patients in mental institutions by 50% or more. The new law provides the tools with which we can accomplish this objective.
Despite JFK's initiative, community mental health care was vastly underfunded, and those with severe mental illness faced care and housing challenges, and many states found they'd cut too many beds. North Carolina eliminated nearly half of its state psychiatric beds over the last 2 decades. By 2016, the state was ranked one of the lowest in the nation in hospital beds per population. Staffing shortages during COVID only made wait times worse. I spoke to dozens of people about the issue. Everyone told me they were frustrated. The judges, the DAs, the healthcare providers. Jail staff, too. They're also on the front lines of this mental health crisis.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
I met with Derwin Briscoe, the Chief Deputy of the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office, about an hour outside of Charlotte.
So we're going to go down this hallway to the housing.
Okay.
We house 324 inmates on a daily basis.
What percentage of the inmates you have here now do you think have a mental illness?
Some form I would say close to 40%.
This guy, he's beating the wall or hitting the wall. I don't know what he's doing. I don't know what he's doing. How many would you say, what percentage of serious mental illness, like a psychosis or something?
Probably about the 10% of the individuals that we have in our facility. Those are inmates that are either on some type of isolation, where it may be because of their suicidal, or if they got clothes on, they're not suicidal. He doesn't have any clothes on, so he has a suicide smock, so that tells me that he is some form of
suicide.
Suicide.
Okay. Yeah.
So with these individuals, the officers have to physically see them 4 times an hour to make sure that they're okay.
I've seen a study that indicated people with serious mental illnesses are more likely to be arrested for low-level crimes. Is that what you see?
I do. And it's because they're not getting the help that they need on the outside. They're committing very small crimes, second-degree trespassing or disorderly conduct, and they will end up getting arrested time after time after time.
How many people right now do you have who are incapable to proceed?
Currently, we have about 6 individuals that are incapable.
How long have they been waiting for a bed?
We have an individual that's been waiting about 8 months, but we had one that was been here for over a year that was waiting.
So long waits are pretty common.
It is.
This is personal for you, right? You told me you have a nephew here who's incapable to proceed.
Yes, ma'am, I do.
What's that like for you?
It's very difficult because I know this individual and I know the things that his family has tried, numerous approaches. I have him involuntary committed, taking him to outpatient care to get him the treatment that he needs.
Chief Briscoe's nephew, Devonte Watson, is 31 years old. He's facing 3 charges, including assault on a law enforcement officer, which allegedly occurred when he was arrested for stealing his mother's car. Watson has been in jail since July of 2022. He was declared ITP 4 months later. Like Ledford, he's been waiting for a bed at Broughton Hospital.
They feel that the system has failed them. Not only has it failed them, it has failed him. So much so that it got to the point where now he's inside of our facility because of not being able to get the help that he needed on the outside. I do believe, as it relates to mental health or individuals inside our detention facilities, of course, race is going to have a portion in it. And I say that because economics trickles down to race status. Oftentimes, I feel like based on your race, you may get offered less things than anyone else may be. And that's not just mental health, that's a whole lot of things. And if I don't have the funds because I'm not offered the same things as because of my race, then of course I'm not going to get the same treatment as anyone else. Nationwide, I think race has some impact on it as well.
Data show that African Americans are overrepresented in jails across the country. It's the same in North Carolina. After we spoke, Chief Briscoe took us to the floor where inmates are housed. It was quiet when we entered, but we were warned inmates might get riled up when they saw the cameras. Most detention officers work 12-hour shifts, and a growing number of the inmates they work with live with mental illness.
What's the emotional impact for you of dealing with people who are mentally ill?
Man, it's definitely not easy, you know, it's something you have to deal with on a personal level and try not to be able to take it home with you.
Sometimes you're gonna leave your family just to come here and may have feces thrown on you, get cussed out just for little things, try to care for people who don't even care for themselves.
We've had officers here injured, you know, from people that suffer from mental illness.
What kind of injuries have you seen?
I've seen, I watched a guy, he got kicked in the neck, and it got him pretty good. He wasn't able to come back to work, so.
You think detention officers have to deal with PTSD because of the job?
Man, I can give you an example of one of mine. Like, if I go into a room, I need to be able to see the door.
We're not professioned to deal with mental health people. That's not our
job title.
Our job title.
I think there needs to be more mental health facilities and mental health professionals to help with some of this, because the jails are getting full of them. I mean,
And the system really needs to take a hard look at it, because the longer that they spend in here, the crazier they're going to get. Jail is not a mental facility. Mental facilities are built for a reason, and that's where those individuals need to go.
While county jails are required to provide health care, many don't have much funding. Without proper treatment, inmates can get worse. It's been nearly 4 months since I visited Dylan Ledford. His last attorney switched jobs, and his new attorney, Matthew Hawkins, called to tell me that Ledford's mental health has been deteriorating.
How you doing?
Good, how are you? Good to see you.
Yes, good to see you. How you doing, Matt? Mr. Hawkins, sorry about that. So, why are you here now? What brought you guys here today? Did someone tell you to come?
Well, Mr. Hawkins, your attorney, he said he's going to try to get you into safekeeping. Do you know what that is, safekeeping?
I'm not sure what it is, but I'm all for it. If my attorney says that that's what needs to be done, I'm behind him 100%.
Okay. So it's to take you to someplace so you can get some medical care.
What is the protocol for that?
Well, we file a motion, okay, that the judge signs off on. It's actually an order, okay, and the jail here agrees to it. They contact Raleigh. Okay.
Hawkins is trying to get Ledford transferred to a safekeeping unit at a state prison. That's where they house inmates who are considered too dangerous, vulnerable, or sick for jails to manage.
They can't get books here either.
So tell me, who's been visiting you? Anyone?
Nobody's came and visited me. Before you come and see me, I'm interrogating myself and being interrogated. Mm-hmm. So this is a chance for me to voice the things I've been being interrogated about.
Yeah.
On camera.
Yeah.
So you understand? Now,
yeah.
If I'm being interrogated and then no one's coming to see me, and then you come and see me with a camera, that means that now that I've been interrogated, I got my story straight, and I know that this is facial recognition, and I have to say exactly what they tell me to say.
Okay, you think we're going to use facial recognition though?
No.
This
okay.
Is
facial recognition.
Oh, got it.
I can't tell a lie.
Okay, I understand.
Can't lie.
I understand.
And the reason why I can't lie is because they're using facial recognition, and I'm not a liar. Yeah. And this is the thing.
Dylan, last time you saw him, he was like this.
Yes.
When you send him for safekeeping, what's going to happen?
In safekeeping, they just have better medical facilities up there, especially when it comes to dealing with people with severe mental health issues. So he would stay at safekeeping, hopefully until his bed at Broughton is ready. He's still, 10 to 15 people deep on that waiting list still. To me, there's nothing worse than where he is now. And so I think it only makes sense to try to at least give him a little bit of a springboard to getting to Broughton, because we simply don't know. 10 to 15 people deep on the waiting list could mean a couple of weeks, it could mean a couple of months, it could mean 6 months. We have no idea.
Thank you, sir.
Ledford was transferred to safekeeping about a week later. Chief Briscoe's nephew, Devonte Watson, has been in jail for almost a year and a half. He's still waiting for a bed.
I truly feel like the longer he sits in jail, it changes his mental status, and he's continuing to go downhill. It's difficult for me to see that he's inside the jail not getting the proper care that he needs, and it's no fault of the jail. Jails are not designed to give the proper care for mentally ill inmates.
After 531 days behind bars, Ledford finally got a hospital bed. But many more across the country remain stuck in a fractured system.
People who are in this process of being found incapable and being committed to state hospitals, I think there should be a heightened responsibility for those people. Those are people who may not even understand that what they are doing is wrong. If we want to have a community that is functional, that prioritizes everyone's success, then we need to look after the most vulnerable people, and that's exactly who these people are.
Wow. I had 1,000 questions the first time I saw this beautiful film, and I have 1,000 more now. But I will give my colleagues an opportunity to speak with you all. But I do want to. I'd be remiss if I didn't give you some sort of introduction, Dana and Chief Durwin or Chief Briscoe, but. Briefly, Dana is an award-winning journalist who has worked at 60 Minutes, CNBC, CBS This Morning, and other major media organizations. And she is primarily responsible for putting this film together. And Chief Briscoe, I have to say that as a former law enforcement officer who, I worked in LA for 18 years, one of the no-nos was, don't get personal. Don't put your own personal business in any of this. And you have defied that. And I so admire you for that, because once it hits home, once it gets personal, we can identify with it, right? So Chief Briscoe is he's the chief of the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office, and that's in North Carolina. And I will let them say as much or as little as they want to. But Dana, if you would like to get us started, that would be great.
Sure. So so I'm not the only person responsible for getting this put together. This is really a team effort, but the director, very gifted director, is Deborah Souza Silva. So she probably gets more of the credit for putting the film together. I was the reporter on the radio series and then on this. But you wanted me to tell a little bit about myself and how, okay, so I didn't intend to become a reporter or a producer, which is what I did for most of my career in journalism. I was a law student and liked law school a lot, actually. Had to take some time off after my first year. I got sick, had to take some time off. While I was out, I started to watch Nightline with Ted Koppel, and I was like transfixed. And I thought, wow, if you want to change the world, this is what you do. And so I thought, I'll just go and see if Ted Koppel would hire me. And I convinced him to hire me, and that's what happened. So. I'm afraid your sound goes in and out, so. Okay.
Chief Briscoe. Thank you, Dana.
Sure.
Chief Briscoe.
Oh, so first off, I want to say thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. So the way that I got into law enforcement, I'm kind of like Mr. Ervin when I really had no desire to get into law enforcement. I completed 4 years of being in the Marine Corps, and once I got in the Marines, I was looking for a job, and I was approached by some individuals that I knew, and at the time I applied. And at that time, I started working as a detention officer inside our detention facility. And throughout the time, I've been blessed enough to work myself up through the ranks to become now the Chief Deputy of the Sheriff's Office. So I've been in the profession for now 31 years. So for someone that had no desire to get into law enforcement, to still be here 31 years, and the reason why I'm still here is because I still love what I'm doing. And I heard you say something about the not getting personal. That's correct. We've always been told don't put your personal business when you're out. But what I've found is sometimes you have to go beyond the norm if you're trying to get the proper help that's needed for individuals. And I felt like that was at that time, and it wasn't just for my nephew, it was just for any other of those that's in the system that's not getting the proper care or attention that they need.
Great. How's your nephew doing? Can we get
Actually,
a status update?
It's ironic, and I have to give credit to the film Fractured. When the film was premiered, we had a panel discussion after the premiere, which I was on a part of the panel, and just so happened that the Assistant Attorney General was in the audience. And the next day she contacted me about that. And within the following week, there was a bed for him in the facility. So he's now he's still in Broughton Hospital. But because he was found incompetent to stand trial, our district attorney decided that he was going to dismiss the criminal charge that he has. But he's still in a place where he can get the proper help that he needs.
Right. But I guess the first question that I had the first time I saw the film was how ironic that you're the head of this facility, that you're the literally the chief, and you can't do anything about your nephew.
Yeah.
And others like him.
Yes. It is ironic. I guess because it's outside of my hands. Because once it gets into the legal system, there's some legal parameters that has to be met. I don't want to say it, but some red tape that we have to go through to get the proper care for individuals. Which, in my opinion, as I stated in the thing, that I felt like if they were given the proper care prior to them getting charged with whatever charge they may be charged with, they may not be in the same situation. They wouldn't be in jail.
Right. Dana, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, Chief Briscoe's giving a very high level, almost the CNN headline version of what happened with Devonte, because his nephew, because Chief Briscoe got up and said it's been, something like 400 days since Devonte had been found incapable to proceed. When someone's found incapable to proceed, they're supposed to go at that point onto the wait list for a bed. But the woman in the Assistant Attorney General for the hospital, who was in the audience, went, wait, it hasn't been 400 days since he's been on a hospital wait list. And she went and looked and found that his paperwork wasn't transferred for 7 months. So he sat in jail for 7 months without having been found incapable to proceed, without being on a wait list. And in fact, my reporting in general has found that there are all sorts of problems, just the ball getting dropped here and the ball getting dropped there and a signature not getting here and a court order not being signed for 3 weeks. And it all adds up. And then you have on top of this incredible shortage we have in North Carolina of state psychiatric beds. And it creates this basically humanitarian crisis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks like we have a comment as well as a question. If my colleagues on the panel don't have a question at the moment, let's read this one. This anonymous attendee says, really well done documentary, amazing work. Can you expand on the process of choosing the main person in this documentary? And I think that'll go to you, Dana.
Sure. So the reason we chose, well, my radio series is my 11-part radio series had individual defendants in most of those radio series, in most of them. Dylan was someone who was still in jail. We did have access to him in the Gaston County Jail. And that helped. Not all jail, some jails were more helpful than others. So those were, of course, criteria. But the other thing is that it's incumbent upon us to be able to get informed consent. And when someone's incapable to proceed to trial, they can still consent to other things. They can still consent to medical care. They can still make other decisions for themselves. And so, but after talking to a bunch of folk, I came to the conclusion that it was very important that they understand that I was a journalist. I was not a doctor. I was not a lawyer. I was asking questions for the purpose of a story. And so Dylan understood that. And so I felt that he was able to give informed consent. And in fact, in the radio series, there was one person, even though his attorney consented, and even though his mother, who was I think his legal guardian, consented, and he gave the interview, we chose not to use it because we were concerned about his ability to give consent.
Okay. It looks like we have two hands up, and I'm sorry I didn't see who went up first. I'll choose Amber. Professor Broden, you can unmute yourself if you have a question.
Yeah, sure. I was last of my colleagues, Michael and Matt, so thank you. This is something that I talk about heavily within my class, this incompetency to stand trial, or this phenomena that we're experiencing. And one thing that I think I was curious about was, do you think that the time frame that some of these inmates are being transferred into state hospitals is due to the overpopulation and overcrowding of these facilities? I'm sure it's in conjunction to many other issues, but could that be one possible reason?
So most states, as the secretary in the film explained, most states cut back on the number of state psychiatric hospital beds in the middle of the last century with the idea of putting more people in the community. When they truncated the number of beds, they didn't necessarily subsequently grow the number of beds when the population grew. North Carolina lost nearly half of its state psychiatric beds, even though I think we grew by about 2 million people. So we have 900 beds now for a state of about 11 million people. And that's for everybody, not just for the incapable to proceed defendants. Then on top of that, because I am told, and I don't have this, but the state the state hospital system says that that the staff salaries are low compared to other places. And so of our 900 beds, only 600 are operating. So now we have, and this is a very important point, we have 600 operating beds. A lot of people who are in those beds can't be discharged, even though they're ready to be discharged, because there's no appropriate place for them in the community. So they're just sitting there in beds without because there's no place for them to go. You have the incapable to proceed people, and they've got a legal, basically they're being involuntarily committed to the hospital. So they got to go there, right? So what that's actually happening is that other people who are not in the criminal justice system are having a hard time getting a bed. And so we also have a long waits at emergency rooms for those who need a bed at a state psychiatric hospital or other places. And so we have basically just a perfect storm here. I know California has a slightly different picture. I'm not entirely sure. Of course, in California, you have the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which has ruled that there has to be anything above a 7-day wait is too long. So I'd imagine, as I remember, your waits are a little bit longer, and you also have much more opportunity for people to be restored when they're behind bars in jail. So it's slightly different than what we've got here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, we've got a couple, and my colleague Matt Patino has a question, but just to piggyback on what you said, Dana, when Ronald Reagan was governor in the 1960s in California, he pretty much decimated the mentally ill inmate situation. We have 2 or 3 big institutions, but I was hoping that you and the chief could maybe help us with the distinction between what you're talking about and facilities like for example Vacaville in California for the criminally insane. So I'm assuming that those are not the same things. Chief, would you like to comment on that?
Okay, so here in North Carolina, basically our mental health facilities are like Dana said, they operate on 2 aspects. We per se don't have a facility for the criminally insane. So once someone is found incompetent of standing trial here, it's an involuntary commitment order, and they're taken to a secure facility, which will be the same one. It could be the same facility which someone, a civilian or someone that hadn't committed a crime could be in. But they're typically it's in a place that's a little more secure. For instance, Broughton Hospital, it has a secure portion of it as well. So that's the place that they will be housed there. And the whole purpose for them being there is to get them to the point where they're able to stand trial again. So we don't per se just have a place just for the criminally insane. But the major problem is with because we have a shortage of beds, those individuals are being housed in standardized detention facilities. And here in North Carolina, there is nothing no detention facility that's capable of maintaining the care that they need inside the facility. We have some, to a small extent, there's some medical things that we can do for them, but just very minute when it comes to mental illness. So on an aspect, they're getting worse than they are getting better or getting the help that they need.
Let me piggyback on what the chief just explained. So in North Carolina, we have people who are incapable to proceed to trial and people who are not guilty by reason of insanity. Someone who's incapable to proceed to trial, what that means is that at the time that they are charged and they meet with their defense attorney and so forth, and there's a case, they either don't understand the charges against them, or they can't assist their lawyer in their defense. Okay, so it's a matter of a time. For someone who's not guilty by reason of insanity, that's at the time of the crime itself. They were not able to, I'm sorry, I've forgotten the name of the standard, but basically they couldn't tell right from wrong. So there's it's different time periods of when you're impaired. And of course, someone can be impaired all the way through.
Matt?
So my question for Dana and for Chief Briscoe both, it seemed like Dylan was somewhat lucid and somewhat aware of what his condition was, and the film mentioned briefly about some of your inmates committing these really low-level crimes. Are they aware that they're committing these low-level crimes in order to get some sort of treatment?
So they may not be committing those crimes to get some sort of treatment. They're usually just sort of doing they're trespassing on property for which they've been told not to come back again, or they're it's very they'll, like one guy I had who was in and out of jail, and what his public defender called a life sentence on the installment plan. It was for things like trespass. It was for things like going into the pharmacy, the convenience store and stealing 2 chocolate pieces of candy, that kind of thing. And so they're not necessarily trying to get care. They're just on the street shouting at them, shouting to people and shouting, or not being willing to stay clothed. I mean, Chief Briscoe probably has a better perspective at this than I do.
That's correct. What Dana's saying, the vast majority of those that are charged with low-level crime are those like this. Typically, a trespassing charge is typically a misdemeanor larceny charge, or sometimes drunken disruptive or being public intoxication, and they will very small charges. And I think, and it's not because they're needing help that they're committing these crimes. It's more or less that because of their mental illness, that they're not aware of going back to the same place is going to get them arrested, or stealing this candy bar is going to get me arrested. That's typically the reason why it happens. It's because of the mental status that they're in, that they don't know what they're doing is, 1, illegal, and 2, that it even bothers them that they're going to get arrested again.
But just to be clear, most people, when they're charged with a misdemeanor, and Chief Briscoe, once they're charged with a misdemeanor and they're found to be incapable to proceed to trial, it's not uncommon for the prosecutor to dismiss the charges. Why? Because in North Carolina, you can't be held longer than the possible sentence. Well, if your maximum sentence for a misdemeanor here is 100, I think it's 120 days or 115 days or something. So, and that the wait time is 300 days. So they dismiss the charge. But then what happens is they're not getting the help and they go back on the street. And so it becomes this cycling thing that Chief Briscoe sees every day.
Mike, could I intrude into your time just for a second? Because I kind of had a follow-up. Here in California, back when I was a police officer, we were not given any sort of training when it came to dealing with anybody who had a mental health issue or mental illness. But we did have the avenue of taking somebody under the 5150 hold, which is the automatic 3-day hold. Do you have anybody that's in your facility, or is there that kind of training for the street officer to kind of make that determination? Maybe this person needs to be directed towards mental health rather than incarceration.
Yes, we have what's called crisis intervention training. So we typically try to get about 90% of our officers go through which is about a 40-hour school, week-long school, to get enough to identify when they're dealing with someone that's in a crisis versus someone that's committing a crime, so that we can divert that to either a superior support group or somewhere else, that instead of bringing them to jail. So yeah, we're getting some of that training.
Mike?
My question is for Chief Briscoe. First, thanks for being here, and thanks for participating in the documentary and being so open. And that's my question. You know, normally we don't see law enforcement embracing transparency and inviting the press to walk through their facilities, particularly the corrections field. So what was your decision-making process to open up to that kind of cooperation with newsmakers or journalists, and did you face any backlash for that decision?
No, I haven't. So originally, the way it came about to me is North Carolina has what the Sheriff's Association, and the executive director of the Sheriff's Association, I think Dana interviewed him. His name is Eddie Caldwell, and Eddie gave her which the Sheriff's Association comprises of the 100 sheriffs. And if there's a conversation with Eddie Caldwell, and Eddie Caldwell feels that it's important that something should be getting out of it, then it really means something to him and the sheriffs across North Carolina. So because now, after Eddie talked to Dana, he reached out to me and said, "Hey, she's going to give you a call," and I thought maybe you would be the right person that she wanted to talk to. I don't know why he thought that, but he did. So I had to talk to my sheriff, who's in charge of the detention facility itself. And my sheriff is just great that he wants to, he's all about trying to help where we can get help. So when everything that I talked to him about, I informed him that there was going to be times they want to tour the facility. They even may want to talk to inmates. But of course, we want to make sure that we talk to their attorneys, went through the legal process, got all that done. But once I got the okay from the sheriff, and I was more than happy to be able to accommodate whatever we could accommodate.
So, and this came out of my radio series, because what happened in the radio series is the public defender brought me down to a different jail, and said to ask the chief there to allow me to interview some of his clients, the public defender's clients. And I told the jailer there what I was doing, and she said, "Well, this is really important, and you better interview me, because I got to tell you, this is having a really big impact on my people." And on, this is, so she was up in arms about it, and I interviewed her, and she was great. And when we did that story, and I had also interviewed Eddie Caldwell, but after we did that story, the Sheriff's Association chose to send that out with their email. So then that helped a lot getting to Chief Briscoe. But there was a lot of places that didn't want me there, and I had jail lawyers that screamed at me and all that kind of stuff. But there were this is a systemic failure. Mm-hmm. And what became really clear to me in my reporting is that there were very few villains here, right? Everybody was sort of a victim of the system, including, as you saw in the film, the detention officers who are having a hard time dealing with all of this. There are, there's a California survey of prison officers, not jail officers, of prison officers, that finds that they have higher levels of PTSD because of the job, and higher levels of suicide. And this is tough on everybody. So to me, the only villains were the people who were pretending that it didn't exist and refusing to fund any help for anyone, which we have had here for a very long time.
Well, we don't want to hold you up any longer, especially in light of the the shooting that's happening right now, Chief Briscoe. Can you give us an update? Have you heard anything? Because we heard that there were 5 officers that were shot.
Yes, so what little information that I do have is that, yes, there were 5 officers shot. There was U.S. Marshals along with some Charlotte Mecklenburg police officers that was executing the warrant. And encountered some gunfire. Now, from my understanding, there may be a couple law enforcement officers that has subsided to gunfire.
Oh no!
Oh boy, I'm so sorry, and our hearts go out and prayers to the rest of the officers and everyone at the scene, the first responders, and we're equally, or we're doubly grateful to you, because when we first started talking before the program actually started, we thought you were going to say, I can't do this, I've got something else going on. So we're so grateful to both you and Dana for sticking with us. And I share your frustration, though. I mean, there must be thousands of inmates who are in the same situation as the people that you highlight in your film, Dana, and we want our audience to be aware of that. This is not just a one-off. This is systemic, and it is throughout the United States. So hopefully, with this film and others like it, there'll be some changes made. We've already seen it as a result of your film. So thank you so much again. And hopefully you can come back in a few weeks and give us an update and say everything is fixed now, or what? We hope. So thanks again, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, thank you.
Take care.